Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As we mentioned earlier, we'll be talking about tourism here in Egypt, especially the statements by Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Khalid Al-Anani. Now, Egypt is expecting tourist flow, especially now that most world countries started vaccination. And apart from that, Egypt has been taking great measures in terms of health, in terms of precautionary measures, all the measures applied in hotels. Also, Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Khalid Al-Anani, said that he expects that by fall 2024, Egypt will go back to its tourism levels pre the coronavirus pandemic. And he said that the nature of the open-air tourism destinations in Egypt will help in attracting more tourists. Of course, Egypt is also exerting more efforts in attracting more tourists to Egypt. There are numerous efforts to attract more German, Russian and Ukrainian tourists, also with the expectations of the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum soon. Inshallah, this should also attract more tourists to Egypt. So in order to know more about that, we're very much delighted to be here in the studio with our dear guest, Dr. Yehia Abdel, Kader, tourism expert and tourism counselor. Good morning to you, Dr. Yehia.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much.
Now, to start with, plans to promote travel for Russian and Ukrainian tourists.
Well, actually, Dr. Anani is conducting a vigorous, strategy for promotion of tourism and travel to Egypt. There's a budget of $90 million that's going to be dedicated to be spent over 3 years. And this is going to promote digital, promotion, strategic marketing, destination branding, and this is going to be through fam trips, road shows, and special events conducted by the ministry. So part of this, like 2 weeks ago, the Ministry of Tourism Promotion Division, they invited 20 of the travel media and consumer publications, the major one in Ukraine, because it's becoming now one of the major generating markets for inbound travel to Egypt. So 20 of them, they visited Kader, Sharm el-Sheikh, Cairo, and for the first time they visited Alamein, because they're going to make special issues and promote this to the Ukrainian audience and to generate more business back to Egypt.
So Alamein is now on the touristic map of Egypt, and it is being promoted for tourists coming to
Exactly, because we do the classical tours like Cairo, Aswan, Luxor, and then Red Sea, but now Alamein is going to be a year-round resort for its business enterprises, for education program in universities. So now I was talking to Mr. Magid Abusdera at the Ministry of Tourism, and he said that all new invited fam trips and special tours to Egypt, they are going to be visiting El Galala, Alamein, the administrative capitals, because these are the new destinations we are currently promoting now.
Yes. What about establishing new tourism offices abroad? How would that help in attracting more visitors?
Definitely yes, because at one point, we had 20 offices worldwide, covering most of the populated universe, the most generating countries. So Dr. Madbouli, Prime Minister, His Excellency, issued a directive that 2 new offices will be opened, one in Ukraine, in Kiev, because it's becoming a major inbound travel market to Egypt now, and the other one is going to be New York, and we had an office in New York since the 50s, but it was shut down in 2017 for 5 years. And this office, service the whole of, North America, Latin America, nearly about Canada, US, and 35 Latin American countries, and that accounts for nearly 40% of world economy.
Yes.
So having one office in New York is going to, generate and motivate and promote tourism in that part of the world.
China is a huge market for Egypt in terms of tourism. How can we attract more Chinese tourists to Egypt?
Well, actually, the good news is not that the Chinese travel to Egypt. They are love. They they are very much in love and passion for culture tourism. They are not beach goers, and leisure. They like to go to Luxor, Aswan, museums, heritage and antiquities.
More into cultural tourism.
Exactly. Most Asians, you know,
Most
like
Asians,
are not
the
into
Japanese
leisure.
too.
Exactly. So what's happening, you know, like recently is that there is a Chinese corporation specializes in hospitality for the first time. They started developing resorts. The first one is in El Gona Resort, and the other one, Mr. Muin Kandil, a leading hotelier, was talking to me that the other boutique hotel is currently opening in Marsa North Coast. And this is excellent because during this time where there wasn't much developments, Egypt will be having 3 more, new 3,000 rooms in El Gona and North Coast and in Marina Alamein as well, opening by the end of this year. So this is excellent news for the travel industry that we are generating more business and we are developing more new resort properties in our Egyptian destination.
The idea of the European Union issuing a special passport for those who have been vaccinated against COVID-19 and how that allows citizens in the 27 nations of the European Union to move freely among those countries. If this experience is applied in Africa, how would that help in bringing African tourists to Egypt?
Well, actually, you know, like the COVID pass that was recently issued, you know, like through the European Union to make travel within the 27 countries accessible and with no procedures and regulations. This is one thing, you like to promote it locally in the region. And then, you know, like if there's more vaccinations worldwide, like Africa and the African Union, like maybe like a month ago, was issuing a green passport for Africa as well to make it accessible for, you know, like Africans in the African continent to move freely, you know, like and enjoy visiting locations and destinations, you know, like regional wide.
Yes.
So we look forward that both, you know, like the African Green Passport and the COVID pass for the European Union will be, you know, like harmonized so that more accessibility and there's going to be less hassle and procedures for travelers worldwide. This is excellent for the tourism industry and for Egypt as well.
Of course. Mrs. Noor Ali, head of the Tourism Committee in the Parliament, requested the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health to exempt German tourists from the PCR upon arrival. How would that help in attracting German tourists to Egypt, especially that the Germans are known for loving Egypt and they used to come in huge numbers?
Well, the good news that Egypt Air, for example, is flying now to 4 German destinations. They fly to Frankfurt, to Munich, to Berlin, and just yesterday they started flying to Düsseldorf. So these are direct flights which is going to generate business between the 2 countries. And Germany is like one of the top destinations that has been immunized and vaccinated. There's 82 million Germans, 80 million of them has been vaccinated. That's why they were reluctant, you know, like to visit Egypt because they don't want to sit for the PCR. And Ms. Noura, she was very alert. She visited His Excellency Prime Minister and Minister of Health and requested of them that German visitors are mostly like European Union. They don't need to sit for the PCR as long as they have their COVID pass and they are, you know, like twice vaccinated and they are secure and safe. Yes.
Now, would you talk to us about the return of more flights from Cairo to Hurghada? How would that help in bringing more tourists to the city of Hurghada, tourists who wanted to visit Cairo as well, enjoy its destinations, its old Cairo area, the museums, everything, and then going back to Hurghada? Now, with more flights from Cairo to Hurghada, how would that help?
Well, really, like about 60% of direct flights to Hurghada, you know, like is charter flights and some scheduled, you know, like from the Gulf, like for example, like we have Fly Dubai from Bahrain, from Saudi. We have regular flights directly to Hurghada and Sharm el-Sheikh. And, you know, like even like one of the largest, you know, like tour operators worldwide, TOWI, the starting flying directly to Hurghada and Marsa Alam after they've been on hold like for about 6 months. So this week they are resuming these flights back to Hurghada and Sharm el-Sheikh. And Well, on just like for the account, you know, like currently we have 12,000 visitors. They come daily to Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada. Daily now, like on every day, you know, like we have direct flights, as I said, from the GCC countries. We have direct flights from Malpensa and Rome, and like we have direct flights from Geneva, from chartered flights
To Hurghada.
and to Sharm el-Sheikh as well. And then Egypt Air is having like about a very large amount of daily flights to both destinations. Some they like to go like by coach, you know, they visit the Cairo Museum, but like about 70% they love to fly directly from destinations or via Cairo.
Yes. Sir, what do you think of the importance of opening new museums? Now, Egypt has recently inaugurated the Egyptian Museum of Civilization. It is expected to inaugurate soon the Grand Egyptian Museum and also the Museum of the Capital. How would that bring more tourists, especially those interested in museums?
Well, you know, like museums, like maybe like since like the 18th century, you know, like the Cairo Museum opened like in 1907. So it's like 120 years ago. So really, you know, like museums are very attractive because they create knowledge, information, tolerance. When I worked in the United States as a tourist counselor, there are over 2,000 universities in the US. Each university has its own museum. And in each one of these museums, there is an Egyptian division. So you can imagine the multitude of our antiquities, you know, like, I mean, displayed worldwide. So with the development, you know, like an establishment of more museums, I mean, partly, you know, like with the support of the government in conjunction jointly with private sector, like the one in Hurghada, for example, we should develop more because, for example, when we develop the Fustat Museum, we have 7,000 visitors per day.
Yes.
You know, like there is too much passion, you know, like for visiting museums, and they promote the ultra motors for travel and adventure and anticipation. So museums is a great vehicle for promoting travel and
But there are many other museums, Dr. Yehia, that are underrated and if properly promoted, they can actually attract so many tourists, like Geir Anderson, for example,
Yes.
Museum, like so many museums, like the Royal Jewelry Museum in Alexandria, so
yes.
many museums around the country that actually they have their uniqueness and they are full of beautiful
Antiquities,
pieces that can
yes.
actually attract more tourists. What do you think of that?
Exactly. Well, really, Egypt, you know, like is lucky and fortunate with its heritage, you know, like they're like 7,000 years ago, and currently, you know, like since the Renaissance time, and with the Muhammad Ali dynasty, you know, like we had Mahmoud Said in painting, and Mahmoud Khalil Museum,
Yes, art museums
you know, like
as well.
you know, like the Gauguin and Van Gogh, all these paintings. Really, we have to differentiate between having museums and managing museums. We are a little bit behind, you know, like in managing museums property. For example, we have to make standardization for the opening and closing hours.
Yes.
I had friends, businessmen coming from China. They want to go to the Cairo Museum. I asked the tour guide, Yumna, and said they close at 3 o'clock. So we had to make him a plan to go to the Fustat Museum, which closes at 6 o'clock. This is redundant, you know, like there should be one rule, opening hours and closing hours.
Yes.
So because worldwide museums, they open at 8 and they close at 8. So when a traveler comes to Egypt, once I went to Betis Scenario on a weekend and there was French visitors as well. You know what we found? We found it's closed. Why? It belongs, it's under the administration of the Alexandria Library.
Okay.
And these are like regular working hours, so they take the weekend off. And visitors, because they travel and visit on weekends, they go and they found the place shut down. So you are losing audience, you are losing visitors, you are losing knowledge and information and revenue as well. So there should be one clear, division, which is in charge of all the museums nationwide. And this is going to be for the benefit of the country as well.
Yes. Egypt is the main gateway to African countries that enjoy enormous tourism potential. How can Egypt benefit from its unique location as a gateway to African countries for European and Asian tourism?
Well, you know, like Egypt is like the crossroads, you know, like for 3 continents, for Europe, for Asia, Africa, and the Mediterranean as well. So really we have a great opportunity. Egypt Air currently is expanding its network. They have like over 70 destinations that they fly to. And we remember that we have unique access to Africa. So with Egypt, like as head of the African Union 2 years ago, now there are more plans and like vigorous plans for the Ministry of Aviation to support Egypt Air to get more carriers and open more routes. And this is really linking Africa and promoting travel across, like Asia, Africa, and Europe as well.
Yes. What about more Russian tourists to Hurghada in particular?
Well, the Ministry of Tourism, the promotion division, last week just, they invited the Russian TV and the delegation. They visited Cairo, Luxor, and they visited the administrative capital and the Hurghada as well. Why? They were coming really in a, not an inspection trip, but just like to shoot, and show the audiences the places that shortly they are going to come to Egypt again with the resumption of the flights. So for example, I was talking to staff of the Ministry of Tourism. They said they went to the aquarium, they visited Bedouin villages, and they checked on the airport facilities, hotels, to check on, like a procedure and the quality of the vaccination, and like how staff, when they come and visitors, they're going to be safe and sound, inshallah.
Yes. There are some, again, underrated spots here in Egypt that can actually be further promoted to attract more tourists, like old mosques and monasteries and churches. The monastery in Muqattam, for example, that's carved inside the mountain. The beautiful mosques dating back to the Mamluk and Fatimid eras here in Cairo. I mean, we have so much potential that we need to further promote. What do you think of that?
Definitely yes, because I have many friends and visitors and travel writers. They come to this unique location and they say, you have all these treasures in Egypt, if you have only one, antiquity or heritage of this is going to create, tourism demand in the country.
Yes, yes.
So really, the Ministry of Tourism, really, they have lots to do. We have visitors from 35 countries, but they need to have subdivisions, as you already mentioned, for the heritage location like downtown Cairo, Fustat, Al Khalifa, Darb al-Ahmar, all these locations as compared to destinations in Geneva and France.
The cathedrals and churches and monasteries.
For example, in Morocco, they start, turning the old houses into the Riyadh, and they have visitors, they come from Europe and they settle there, and some of them, they make it their home, second home. So really, but there is a plan, with the Ministry, of Tourism and Culture to develop this heritage area. Look at, we're doing the Fustat now. And the
yes.
aqueduct,
Yes.
So this is in progress, and inshallah, shortly we'll be achieving all these expectations.
I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Yehia Abdel Kader, our tourism expert and tourism counselor. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all for this segment of The Breakfast Show, but more is yet to come. Stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break.